All right, welcome back to the program. Good morning, Nigeria, and we're live on the network service. Just a reminder, this morning our focus is on examining efforts made by our country to, of course, align government's inclusive policies, with our National Development Plan or PATH. So if you want to get all the information, we will send out the number to, of course, be part of our conversation. In the course of our program, the numbers will be displayed on your screen. For now, let's take a listen to the background report put together by our correspondent, Ibrahim Belugunda.
Nigeria is steadily moving towards tighter economic coordination with renewed effort to ensure that growth across all 36 states reflect and reinforce federal economic priorities. The focus is no longer fragmented progress, but a more unified economic direction that works for the entire country. Globally, the conversation has evolved. Leading economists now recognize that growth confined to a few regions is neither resilient nor sustainable. The emphasis has shifted to development models that are broad-based, where prosperity is designed to lift entire nations, not just select states or sectors. It is within this context that the National Economic Council meeting is placing inclusive growth as the center of its agenda. The objective is clear: strengthen coordination between federal and state governments, accelerate shared economic outcomes, and ensure development strategies are mutually reinforcing rather than competing. Participants at the meeting were united on one fundamental principle: that development cannot be considered successful if opportunity depends on birthplace. A child born in Lafia, Makurdi, Aba, Sokoto, or Lagos should have equal access to the tools needed to thrive and contribute meaningfully to the economy. Achieving this vision requires deliberate synchronization of the renewed Hope National Development Plan 2026 to 2030 by consolidating ongoing reforms and reinforcing policy continuity. The plan seeks to position Nigeria's growth path in alignment with the long-term aspiration outlined in Nigeria Agenda 2050. At its core, the plan prioritizes economic diversification, human capital development, infrastructure expansion, private sector-led growth, and climate-resilient key pillars designed to support a more balanced and future-ready economy. This raises critical questions. What concrete initiative has government already put in place to drive inclusive growth? How will the renewed Hope National Development Plan reshape Nigeria's economic outlook over the next decade? And what role must the private sector play in translating policy into widespread prosperity? These are the issues setting tune for today's conversation on Good Morning Nigeria, as our guests take their seat in the studio and the dialogue on inclusive growth and sustainable development begins.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ibrahim Belugunda, for that background report, and a lot of issues that you have raised in that your background report. The guests here, they have listened to them, and I'm sure that they will be able to profess some answers to those questions that you have asked. Let me just introduce the guest that we have in the studio right now. Joining us here is Dr. Tokpe Fasua. He's a special advisor to the President on Economic Matters, Office of the Vice President. Dr. Fasua, it's good to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thanks for the invite.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we also have here with us in the studio Zara Mustafa Audu. She's the Director General, Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PBEC. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning.
All right.
Okay, let's kickstart the conversation with Dr. Fasua. And I mean, we know that you were present at the two-day summit. So tell us how about the week's NEC meeting, and how different is it from the previous one that we have had?
Right, thank you very much. This was in fact a retreat, not a meeting, because the meeting would usually happen every month. This one is the second time. Indeed, it was the second one The first one happened in 2016, in March 2016. So we're talking about 10 years. I'm not sure if they did that under the other previous regimes since 1999, since the return to democracy. But this was tagged the second NEC retreat, which brought together all of the governors and, of course, ministers who are co-opted into NEC. Mr. President graced and opened the sessions on the first day. The chairman of the National Economic Council is Mr. Vice President. He was there all through. The attendance by governors was very impressive. Almost all of them, even the ones that couldn't make it, sent their deputies. You know, and discussions were robust, they were intellectual. For the first time, most people left there, you know, almost everybody got something out of it. There was also on the sidelines a lot of interactions. You know, part of what was discussed was cooperations amongst governors, regional development, regional cooperations, apart from the hard-nut issues of if you like, you know, issues of infrastructure development, economic growth. Of course, it was noted from get-go that national growth is an agglomeration, a kind of accumulation of growth at the state level. So if the states don't grow, the nation cannot grow. And that's what we have seen. So there was, Mr. President inspired the meeting, the retreat, the conference as it were, from day one, making promises about security, which is principal on the mind of many people around the country, and also inspiring in terms of his ambitions and growth, his goals in the Renewed Hope agenda that's currently ongoing. So it was a very good discussion. I believe that hopefully more of those will happen in the future. One of the resolutions from the meeting was to have this more often, have everybody in one room, and you know, have that interaction going. And by the time the people go back, there's so much to do. States also are learning from states. There's some sort of peer review. So you see a few states to be able to display what they've done. Every state governor had the platform. If you weren't on the security panel, you were on the economic panel, or on the tax panel, on the fiscal panel, on the gender balance panel, all those panels. So everybody had a chance to speak and say what was on their mind, and I believe those interactions and inspirations will be taken back to the state level and, of course, the local government levels.
Okay. Can you try and disaggregate the critical areas that the Vice President, highlighted for alignment and sustainable development?
Exactly. It's all about sustainable development beyond growth. The Vice President is big on, he spoke about the economy, spoke about the need for growth, the need for financial and economic inclusion for the people. He's also very big on things like nutrition, for the growing Nigerians, the children of Nigeria, and also, of course, this also spoke about partnerships. The World Bank people were there at some point, telling us about what their plans were for the country. But not only World Bank, including United Nations. We had the representatives of the diplomatic community in Nigeria and so on. So Mr. Vice President was there as a coordinator of the entire discussion. And by being there, it showed that it was a very serious affair. While the governors actually, they ran the show in terms of getting on the rostrum, speaking, getting on panels, and so on, and sharing ideas. So it's all about the total development of Nigeria. And when you look at it, you look at the economic angle, you look at the social angle, you look at the human angle. There was a very robust discussion on human capital development, which also included the private sector. Mr. Aigimokwede was there, I think is chairman of Access Bank or the Holdco, or maybe, you know, he has this, of course, is one of the founders of the bank. And of course, the human capital development discussion focused on the fact that nothing can be achieved except the human capital of this country is developed, you know, even from the public sector, apart from the issues of education and health. There was also a discussion on human capital development in terms of the investment in the health sector. So I think it was a well put together. In fact, we couldn't leave there until around 6 o'clock yesterday. It was very intense for 2 days, non-stop discussions and non-stop intellectual arguments were going on.
We know that, but let's not begin to look at those issues that you have brought out, because I tried to also disaggregate those issues that were raised, you know, and I got about 7 points. And the first one that the Vice President talked about and was very emphatic. In fact, I could count the number of times he used the word inclusion. Inclusive growth. You know, in fact, he had to make analogies between the child who grows up in Lagos and the one that grows up in Makurdi or elsewhere in the remote areas and all that. So for us, when we talk about inclusion, when ordinary Nigerians hear about inclusion, they begin to wonder, are they really talking about us? I mean, how has reforms under this present administration translated into real life experiences for Nigerians?
Okay, now first of all, to note that, you know, this administration is a reform-minded administration. Up to this point, if you would describe this administration in one word, it would be around reform. So Mr. President came, we got rid of about $10 billion in fuel subsidies that used to just walk away from this country. Then, of course, there was the reforms around the Naira, which kind of recalibrated the Naira and refocused Nigeria on exports rather than importation. Then, of course, there's the big one going on now, which is the tax reform. And in terms of financial inclusion, so I think the culmination of it is to let you know that, first of all, when you're carrying out these very big reforms, there's a gestation period for you to expect that it will start to...
Outcomes.
However, already these reforms are yielding. First of all, on the macro level, but also in terms of the human level, which is where the issue of inclusion, I mentioned economic inclusion earlier. It is deliberate. I didn't want to mention financial inclusion, financial being access to accounts and all of those kind of things, how the banks and the fintechs doing, but economic inclusion in terms of how the average Nigerian gets money into his pocket, which is where we are going. That's why we're emphasizing economic inclusion even ahead of financial inclusion. Already we are beginning to see results. You see, you know, there's in the Ministry of Finance, of course, there's monthly payouts that they do, you know, from time to time. But for example, even the tax reform of Mr. President, what we realized was that he put money in the pocket of a lot of workers. By the end of January, companies that actually adhere to the proper calculation of payee. So it's not me saying it, it's Business Day saying it, it's Premium Time saying it. You need to get that research. So you can see that the intention of the reform is to give benefit back to the people. And that is economic inclusion. That is a pro-poor policy. So in spite of the big reforms of this administration, the underpinning philosophy is that it has to be pro-poor. Now, first of all, you deal with the macro. For example, now, exports in Nigeria has increased by about 30%. Importation has reduced by about 20%. More schools abroad are coming to Nigeria. The amount of money we used to spend, let me land on this. Amount of money we used to spend paying schools abroad reduced by 31%. The amount of money that we used to spend for health tourism reduced by 90% between 2024 and 2025. So you're creating a solid superstructure for growth and inclusion.
When you talk about reduction of imports by 20%, I'm wondering if it is a gross data for, holistic data
For the
or
country,
for
yes.
specifics?
No, for the
because
country. I'm talking about cash flow now, money that goes out.
Okay. So I just want to say, well, if you got your salaries, you want to take a look at the number 081-696-88126. You want to give us your feedbacks about the tax reform impact. Please stay with us. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Fasua, for your perspective there. But let's bring in the DG PBEC now. And we've looked at the major highlights of the next summit, which is one of them is defining inclusive growth, challenges to inclusive growth, sustainable development goals, roles of government, private sector contribution, youth and women empowerment. The challenge has always been harmonizing policies, especially state, local governments with the federal government. What is your agency going to do about that?
Okay, well, as opposed to saying what we're going to do, I'm going to tell you what we have done. I have been at this position for a year now, and last year, July, we embarked on our subnational tour. Of course, at the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC, we work with all the subnational government. We embarked on our subnational ease of doing business tour, and this was for two reasons. One, to offer technical assistance to the council at the subnational level, as well as to engage with the businesses within those states. I'm proud to say that we were able to visit 35 states, including the FCT, with exception of Ogun State, which opted out at the very last minute. In addition to the work that we did during that, we released our report on subnational ease of doing business in November 2026, which was launched by the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Kashim Shettima, GCFR. And what we did with that report was we looked at the pros and cons of doing business in each of the states. We highlighted our top 10 states, and we put our states according to tiers, the top tier, the middle tier, and the lower tier. Okay. Again, not to discourage any, any of the subnational, and not to also discourage investors from going, but basically to give a clear picture of where our subnational is. Data is key for driving or attracting investment. Lack of data, lack of information, creates room for a lot of misconceptions, to put it nicely, right? People make assumptions because there's no concrete data or evidence to back otherwise. So what we're trying to do is give, especially for instance our foreign direct investors who we're hoping to attract into Nigeria, give them a clear picture of what it looks like to do business in each and every state. Even the states that are in the lower tier, they could be seen as states with opportunities, because we've also highlighted the areas of concerns, the quick wins, the areas of potential opportunity, right? In addition to that, as it regards specifically to this National Executive Council meeting that was just concluded, we sat on one of the panels, and one of the things I tried to do was give the governors quick actions that they could take home and work on. The conversations were very robust. I need to highly commend my boss, the Vice President, for coordinating this at this level. The Minister of Budget and Planning did an exceptional job. The Permanent Secretary, like we all rightfully agreed here, also did a fantastic job coordinating and getting all the relevant stakeholders into the room. So for us at the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, I saw this as a key opportunity to not just discuss with the governors areas of challenges, but to also highlight things that can be done really quickly to turn the tides. The first day was very interesting because we had robust conversations around Mr. President's ambition of achieving a $1 trillion economy by 2030. Yes, that was very exciting for me. And so as a result of that, after the first day's presentation, I came prepared with solutions as to what I felt the subnational could do in a short period of time. For starters, we spoke around digitalization and optimization of all our government and public services. What is my reason for saying this? Yes, I know people would argue with me and say, oh, the rural woman in the village does not have access to technology. I disagree. It's easier and safer for us to bring government or services closer to them. If they do not have a smartphone or access to technology, they will definitely have a business center in their local domain. They would have a relative who has a smartphone who can help them. It saves them a lot of money from traveling to the capitals or to their ward centers. It's also safer because there's a lot of security challenges along the roads at the moment. We also spoke about having strategic online presence. I have attended several trade missions with many of our subnational government. Our governors speak eloquently, pitch their vision to investors. But let me tell you, the minute you finish pitching to an investor, any sensible person that wants to put their money, the next thing they do is research. How do they research? They go online. We lack strong online presence and visibility. Nigeria does not exist in isolation of the rest of the world, and as such we need to be deliberate with shaping and framing our own conversations. Until we have a stronger visible online presence, first of all, state-wise and then nationally, we will not be able to control the narrative when we are not present in the room to defend some of our ideas or some of our aspirations, right? So this is something that I think is a quick win for the subnational government. We also spoke around clearly defined priority areas. I use Niger State as an example. Everybody, once you think Niger State, you think agriculture. It makes it easier. And for me, I was saying to the governors, even if you have 4 years or 8 years, it's never enough to solve all the problems. But if you zero in on 2 or 3 areas of priority and you factor all your development plans around that, whether it's if you're into agriculture, then you're building roads towards the farms, you're building welfare around that sector. What you're doing is showing policy consistency. What you're doing is by default attracting investors into your space. So our governors need to be more deliberate, more intentional, identify 2-3 areas and fix it. That is legacy. That is the only way to build a true legacy. Spreading ourselves too thin, trying to fix every problem, will never get us to where we want to get to because we don't even have the liquidity in the system. This is something else that was discussed. In fact, even in Mr. President's speech, he spoke about the liquidity and the need for us to be more prudent and to also use our resources more efficiently to achieve our goals. So for you to be able to use your resources efficiently, you need to be able to determine and highlight your priority areas and zero in on that. So 2 more points. We spoke about having robust aftercare, investment aftercare. This is something that was not really a culture for us. We have investors. We constantly go out and look for more investors. Well, before my position here, I used to be at the office of the Vice President as an aide to the President on Foreign Direct Investment. So I started something called the Existing Foreign Direct Investors Roundtable. And this year, alhamdulillah, we're going into the 3rd one of it. I'm encouraging the subnationals to also do it at the state level. Figure out who are your investors, existing investors within your state, whether they are local or they are international. Continue to communicate with them. Build that bridge because it's easier. They are the first point, or they are the first set of investors that would have the appetite to scale up because they're already within your state, and they're your best advertorial. They are the ones, if they're faring well, they will attract like businesses into that state, if that makes sense. And final one for me was policy consistency. One of the things I experienced when I came into this position in PEBEC was it was difficult, with the, say for instance, the SABRE program with the World Bank we're working on. It went from one administration to another, and that break in administration, that transition process, because at the subnational level, some governors were not returning, some literally moved from one political platform to the other. There's no continuity. We need to start designing policies based on justifiable, reasoning that would be sustained and can outlive, each administration. If we keep restarting the circle every year, a new administration comes and you start again, you will never reach the promised line. It's not possible. So there has to be the spirit of continuity. So this, for me, were the 5 critical things that I was able to interject during my short panel session with the governors.
Thank you. Thank you for telling us, what could be done and what should be done.
Right.
And congratulations, you've stayed on the saddle for 1 year.
Thank you.
And if you check the 8-point agenda of Mr. President,
right,
infrastructural turnaround, energy and all that, It's very, very key, and that's where
Absolutely.
ease of business comes in, and that's where your agency, it becomes very, very critical, especially with this alignment and inclusion initiative. But I just would like you to probably enlighten us. Within the past 1 year you've been in saddle, what has changed in terms of doing business in Nigeria?
Okay, for starters, accountability, right? With our reporting mechanisms that we've done, there are two things we do now. Every quarter, we mystery shop all our MDAs that are business facing. Initially, it started off like a joke and people were not taking it very, very seriously. But at the end of the year, when they saw that there was a lot of transparency around publishing what agencies were performing and those that were not performing, as well as our work with the subnational, I think it has created a bit of a push. The fact that some governors or some subnational states were ranked within the top 10, that is pushing our subnationals, to compete in a healthy manner to sort of improve, the business climate within their states. Another thing is collaboration. We have been very intentional with collaboration. We have mapped out our MDAs into clusters, meaning that, in fact, right now as we speak, we're going through a 90-day BPAR program, which is like an accelerator program to help us address the issues that we identified in the report in November. So for us, it's not a name and shame and just, this is what is not working and that's it. We're saying, okay, we need to fix it in 90 days. I just returned from Lagos last week. I shadowed the Ports and Customs whole ecosystem for about 3 days in Lagos with the aid of the MPA, Customs, and all the other agencies which are within that cluster. And we went sector by section by section. This is not working because of this, and this is not working because of that, to identify the actual loopholes and figure out within ourselves. On the third day, we had a strategy session, including the terminal operators, including the truck drivers, etc. What's the problem? We have a goal which has been set for us by the presidency: reduce cargo dwell time from 21 days to 7 days. And by God, inshallah, my aim is that before the end of this year, we will be 7 days or below. We're also working very closely with the National Single Window. So for me, it's more of taking our work from just paper-based policy to practical things that businesses can feel. Until the businesses, for me, from the beginning, I always said, the best feedback and the best judge for what we're doing at PEBEC is the businesses. Until the businesses can tell us that we've moved the needle, there's a level of improvement. We cannot judge based on...
Yes. I like that you talked about moving the needle.
Yes, absolutely.
Because a lot of businesses and businessmen and women still feel that when we talk about ease of doing business, we are still sloganizing. I mean, we are still rhetoricing and all of that. Take, for instance, at the ports now, what has changed? How long does it take? What is the cost of goods clearance?
I'll tell you one thing that has changed in this year that we've been. Also, you need to understand that whether we like it or not, government is extremely bureaucratic, right? It's designed to be in every country for a reason, just so that we present. Well, I guess it's to prevent some excesses, etc. But one of the things that we've managed to achieve, it's a small win, but it's a significant win. Joint inspection has been reconstituted, right? And with the joint inspection at the ports, it means that all MDAs who will be inspecting containers have to do it at the same time. What this does is, because we noticed that one of the major delays is they would say, NAFDAC has inspected, we're waiting for SON. Absolutely. SON has inspected, we're waiting for... No. Once the Ports Health gives you clearance, everybody go on the ship. If you're on any agency that's not there at that designated time to go on, does not want to inspect that container. In fact, to be honest with you, I am looking at moving away from 100% inspection, simply because it's not done anywhere else. I'm leaning towards the studies of the National Single Window. I completely align with them. They're high-risk countries that should be inspected. They're countries that shouldn't be. At the moment, Custom has the technology to track containers or vessels from when they leave till when they arrive. So if there's no intermittent stop that is not recorded or not part of, there's no reason for us to be flagging or checking those vessels. They are checked even before they take off. This is why the customs global system is so robust and so well connected. So, I mean, when we look at some of these things, I feel like our challenges, even my personal challenge in office, is it's based on, you know, legacy problems within the institutions themselves.
So do you have incentives or even consequences for agencies, state governments or state level that probably hinder business or enable it?
So I'll give you an example. With the subnational government, you have to understand the level of autonomy that they have. They are also equally elected, and as such, there are no real punitive measures if you want to go based on our constitution, right? But then you have programs like the SABRE program, right, which is being funded by the World Bank. If the states are not able to meet certain
States like
deliverables,
Abuja, for instance, which is in terms of ease of doing business, it has moved.
right,
You know, significantly.
So if they're not able to meet their deliverables, they're not able to access funding, right? So that's on one part. Another thing that we started to do, which we're being very deliberate, the states within our top 10, the top 10 states, we're being very proactive in pushing the agenda of trying to attract foreign direct investment into those states. Like now, as we're speaking, we've partnered with the British High Commission, the Nest, as well as I think it's I don't know, but I think it's one of the UK agencies in Nigeria, to bring all the diplomatic community together, especially the G5s and the other major state, sovereign states in Nigeria that we do business with, to bring them together in March at some point to showcase our top 10 states, to create that bridge between the subnational government and the international community. Sometimes the reality of it is, even when the subnational government, say for instance the heads of the IPAs or the commissioners of commerce, want to explore other climes to showcase what opportunities they have in their state, they have visa challenges, they just even have lack of information or access. So we're trying to bridge that gap, making it easier for them to be seen, as well as to be included in some of those potential trade missions in all those other states. So these are the things that we're doing. The reason why, for me, at the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC, we try and add value, right? So the only thing we can do with the subnational to lure them into doing the right thing is by adding value when they do the right thing, and sort of ignoring the states that are not towing the line of doing the right thing. So there's no way to influence the situation if a state is not. The entire process of ranking states is so transparent. It's been automated, literally, because, everyone teases me, but my background is software engineering. So every process with us now is automated, is transparent. I sit down with the entire team and we see the outcome of the input, and everybody finds out at the same time which states are ranking. Now, with the MDAs that we work with, the 69 business-facing MDAs that we work with, it's a bit easier to talk about punitive measures. Reason being, we are all employees of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and as such, we can push, which most people know I push a lot, we can push for action from the presidential level. I can push my boss, the vice president, to step in. I can push him to forward memos to Mr. President when several, ministers, heads of departments or agencies are not cooperating in helping us. Yes, so it's easier. It's easier to talk about punitive measures when you're talking at the federal level, more difficult at the subnational level. But overall, to be honest, I think that we are all, especially for this year, I'm so impressed by the conference that was held. I think it shows clearly that there is a level of alignment, there's a deliberate effort to flip the coin. Okay. And that's very impressive.
We allow you to take a breather.
Okay.
Yes, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about, this, because I know that one of the major issues that was discussed at the summit is the issue of fiscal coordination between federal and state governments, and has been the major issue has been how to address the issue of inconsistency in government, policies, which is affecting project implementation. So let's bring in Dr. Fasua now. How do you address such challenges?
Well, fiscal coordination, thank you very much. Well, I want to quickly hark back to an issue I raised in the first speak, which surprisingly, I was surprised that you didn't catch the news. Tribune 2 days ago reported that Nigerians record higher net pay as payee deductions drop. Premium Times, no, just let me land. Premium Times reported 6 days ago, Nigerian workers see salary boost as new tax laws kick in. The Guardian reported 5 days ago, tax reforms, how Nigerians are earning more through pay reduction. Legit, Nigeria also reported, then of course there's this Business Day reported 90% of salary earners had a net increase in their salary. So before you get the outliers,
no, just hold on. Let me react to
even though we're here to talk about NEC meeting.
Yeah.
But again, you're asking, like you just asked a robust question about our portfolio, our performance, and all of that, even though we're here to talk about NEC.
But please let me say something.
Before the outliers begin to call in.
Can you allow me?
Because we have a problem.
No, I've asked the viewer.
Exactly.
I've asked the viewer. It's all about me.
Someone who doesn't have a job will call in and say, oh, this, that. So that's the problem we have. We judge whole situations by outlier data. The angriest person is probably the one that will call in.
This program
and
is
say
interactive.
all sorts of things. You know what I'm saying? Which is fine. But we also, like Chinua Achebe wrote in his book, Things Fall Apart, he said, a naked bird said, since human beings have learned to shoot without missing, he too has learned to fly without perching. So as much as it's an open program, you have people calling from, we too internally, we have to marshal our facts, and we are also getting better at doing that. As a matter of fact, the discussion on ease of doing business, as someone who did business in the UK for 10 years, a registered company, I'll tell you what, before I moved the business to UAE, because the expenses and the taxes and the regulation chased me out. I tell people, I said, the best place for you to do business is in the country where you are from.
Absolutely.
The best place for Nigerians to do business is in Nigeria,
Absolutely.
in spite of all of the challenges. The discussion you had with her, focused a lot on the import side of things. Importers complain. I probably would wager and say that the philosophical ethos of this administration is not the promotion of importation, but rather the promotion of exports. In 2024...
But inclusion. We're talking about inclusion now. Inclusive and sustainable development.
No. Let's not take inclusion to importation. I'm an economist. When you talk about inclusion, the real focus is on economic equality among people. Nigeria actually still has one of the lowest Gini coefficients in Africa, 33.9%. The US is on 44%. South Africa is on 63%. That's the worst in the world. As much as South Africa may look more developed than Nigeria, the fact is that Nigerians are very aspirational. We're go-getters. So therefore, whatever we get in Nigeria goes to Nigerians. It's not good enough, but it is a work in progress. So as a fact, I was going to tell you that in 2024, because I created the 2-year compendium of this administration, we had the highest ever at about 8,600 throughput, 8,620 food containers of export going out to Nigeria. Therefore, we have had 10 consecutive quarters under President Tinubu of trade surpluses, 10 quarters. As a matter of fact, since he came, we have not had trade deficits in this country. And equally, that impacts on the balance of payment, which was $6 billion for the first time in about 10 years, as at 2024, and 2025 figures are being put together. I'm thinking it will be around $8 to $10 billion. So we really understand all of those things. But you mentioned about fiscal coordination between the federal and state government.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, Mr. President did speak about that, and Princess also echoed it now when he spoke about issues of liquidity, the need to be more prudent in management of resources. But let me say this, and this was when I got on the panel, this was also a very critical question I raised. The states of Nigeria paid down 42% of their debts in 2024. Paid down 42%. A state like, was it Jigawa or Kebbi, paid down about 92% of his total debt. My state, Ondo State, paid down about 81% of their total debt. In 1 year, I don't know how they did it. I went to DMO, tried to find out exactly how could this have happened, but maybe it's just the focus of what the states chose to do. But what that means is that many of the states have freed up their balance sheet and they can do more now. So there's no point sitting on cash, right? From a treasury management perspective. No point sitting on cash and now, we're so liquid in this state. What is the infrastructure we are doing for our people? Because especially this infrastructure comes. And that's where financial and economic inclusion comes. The idea behind doing a road to somewhere, people say, is it road we eat? But what that means is that, after food and shelter, the next need of human beings is to move around. As a matter of fact, one of the critical ways of reducing poverty.
Are you redefining Adam Smith's economic?
Oh yes, we challenged Adam Smith. Adam Smith wrote his book in 1787. I mean, for crying out loud.
But it's irrelevant.
This is 2026. No, I'm one of those people. If you check my writings online, I challenge Adam Smith. The whole idea of trickle down, maybe it doesn't work the way. In fact, it's trickle up. They say that now, if you want to change an economy, put money in the hands of people before they break, before the next day they will buy something from Dangote. They will buy Dangote sugar, buy Dangote petrol, buy Dangote something, and then the money trickles back up. Rather than say, oh, give the big man money, maybe no. It doesn't work anymore. So that's one of the ways we've challenged Adam Smith. Even in terms of gender equality, Adam Smith never got married. He lived in his father's house till he died, which he inherited from his mom. One lady, Catherine Marshall, wrote a book, and the title of the book was Who Cooked Adam Smith's Dinner? Right? Because his mom cooked for him. So was the mom acting on rationality, as in, what does the mom need from him? You know? So if Adam Smith had got married and had children, perhaps his perspective on economics would have been different. So it's left to us in 2026 to redefine some of those things and bring our own empirical information and data into the definition of our economics. That's why I'm occupying this small seat today. But back to the issue of financial, fiscal coordination. It's a very critical issue. Number one, to note that government will never have enough money to do what government needs to do. Number two, to say that there's been too much focus on the federal level in this country, when in fact the action is at the state level. I gave some data yesterday where the budget of states like Enugu State especially, since 2023 to date, has increased by about 1,000%, 10 times. Okay? Since 2019, it has increased by 14 times. And some states have taken those initiatives, whereas, of course, budget is budget, implementation is another issue, but if you don't dream it, you can't achieve it, you know? So the whole idea is that we shouldn't put all the pressure on the federal level. States and local governments is where most of our people live, including in Abuja. We have AMAC, we have the area councils, which is where people actually live, okay? And so the more action is going on at that level. The agricultural space is getting transformed. Investments have been made in tractors. Mechanization is coming in. Okay, financial and economic inclusion projects keep going on. Yeah. It's a work in progress. Inflation is dropping. Food prices are dropping. Even though farmers are complaining about the drop in food prices, all of that is not due to importation of food alone. We don't import cassava in this country. But a lot of people went into cassava production. More Nigerians, because of the flood of 2022, which spilled over into 2023 and caused prices to spike. And of course, the reforms also came in around that time. Some food prices went up 300%. More people went into farming to escape that inflation that came. And therefore now, on some products, there's a glut. Okay? Which, of course, it should also be our interest to ensure that food prices stay down, because once you solve the food problem in human, issues, most of the issues are sorted. So we are challenging states, and states are challenging themselves as well, to be able to do more in terms of dreaming bigger, raising better revenue for their people. The tax reform, which is, even though driven by the National Nigeria Revenue Service, which was FRS before, but it's an all-encompassing thing that talks about the philosophy of revenue, okay, and the fact that revenue is what drives the whole budget. If you don't get good revenue, you can't have good plans. We can't focus on the expenditure alone and be borrowing from abroad and borrowing from everywhere. So this is the sessions we had in the last 2 days was a good education for many of the executives that were there, who also shared ideas about how they're doing it, how they're dreaming for their people, taking on new projects and transforming the lives of the people. Minding the fact that as we speak, there's a lot of complications coming from everywhere. There's artificial intelligence coming, which has become a reality now, taking a lot of people out of employment, especially abroad. But that also spills into places like Nigeria. So many people say, oh, we're not getting jobs, or, how do we survive, and all of that. So this is a critical time for us to think about those very important issues, to say, okay, if these issues are coming, how do we solve them? How do we reposition our people? What do we do with our public service? you know, how do we incentivize the private sector to employ more people? What about the people who are self-employed, especially our youth? Many of them are on the internet. Many of them are tech people, you know, creating things. Even many Nigerian youths are working for companies abroad. You would not know. They work on their laptop. They are providing services for companies abroad and so on. You know, so it's an all-encompassing discussion. And it's an ongoing discussion, especially in terms of the fiscal coordination. States come into Abuja every month to discuss the FAC, you know, the Federal Account Allocation Committee, and, you know, they share money. People blame them and say, oh, why are they coming? But I think it's normal. In the United States, there's what is called block grants and conditional grants. Okay, and which is given by the federal government of the United States to different states. The biggest beneficiary state is Mississippi. Some of the states down south, which are what they call the poverty belt, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, all of those kind of states, are the ones that get the most. A state like New York, which is awash with cash, or California, they get not too much, but they get the money because money is made from immigration, from customs in America and co. that are shared services for the whole country also gets distributed just as it is in Nigeria. That's why it's called a federalism. So there's nothing too odd about it. But that doesn't say that the states cannot challenge themselves more in terms of raising their own liquidity and raising their own revenue. The play right now is on revenue generation. I don't call it taxes. It's on revenue generation and understanding that the reforms are proper. They're what I put in the realm of elite consensus to say that only those who can pay should pay. Many people who should pay. Compliance in taxes in this country is around 10%. People don't want to pay who can pay. We keep it in the informal sector. Everybody puts it under the table. Under the table, you don't want government to, but the reforms is coming from an angle of data and targeting those monies to come into the coffers at the state level, at the local government level, and of course at the federal government level.
Dr. Fasher, thank you. You've said so much, but just to clarify my questions to Princess Zara and her response, and to say that they are in sync with the issues that the Vice President raised for alignment, the ease of doing business, and you know, several others, not overburdening Nigerians with, you know, a lot of taxes and all of that. And I think the answers she gave, you know, address the issue. So it's not given more to imports. I think it's all about how Nigerians feel, you know, are they comfortable doing business, whether it's exporting, whether it's importing. But let's not, I would have loved to hear the MSME, and you know why?
Yes, they will come. You're the one, you took it to an intellectual level, which is great.
Yes,
but I would have wanted to hear the MSME level, but the perspective was really about the importers. And I won't be here and let the perspective be only about importers.
I would like to add something. When you talk about the ports and ports and customs ecosystem, you're not only talking about the importers, you're talking about importers and exporters. We're talking about efficiency across borders.
Precisely.
Also, something to note. I definitely will be pro-Nigerian, right? But I'm also a very realistic person. Nigeria is a country that is heavily dependent on importation. We consume, majority of the goods that are consumed are imported as it is today. Even with our export strategy, if you want to be realistic, say for any sector you take, everything from agriculture all the way to manufacturing, assembling, it's a process. It's not an overnight thing. What I'm telling you is I need the efficiency within the ports to be fixed within a 12-month period. So I cannot tie that solely to our export plans. But what I'm saying is, as a whole, because believe it or not, we have the AFCTA agreement is in play at the moment across Africa. Why not turn Nigeria into a hub, a global hub for imports for West Africa?
That's when, if we're able to.
But if our ports are more efficient, so when we're talking, even with the conversations around the ports, it's a bit more robust than, I mean, if you give me all the time, I will spend your whole day.
I agree with you, Princess.
But the reality is, it's more than just improving efficiency. A huge part of it is also attracting investment into the ports so that we have better structures, you know, that can actually, you know, bring in larger vessels. This is a major problem. The quays are not strong enough at the moment, etc. All the technical stuff that they will tell you. But my thing is, regardless of the deficiencies when it comes to infrastructure, we need to fix the efficiency, the culture.
Precisely.
So my thing is for imports or exports.
So how do we fix that?
By being deliberate, by what we're doing now, by what the Vice President has chaired this committee for. It started last year, April. So we'll be going into a year at the end of this April. We've started to move the needle. Joint inspections is a thing. The time is reducing. The terminal operators can attest to it. Another thing we've started to do, which you would see, is we said every month in this year, we will publish the cargo dwell time publicly so that we see if we're moving the needle or not.
Have you considered the number of agencies at the port, which is also one of the major challenges that we have?
To be honest with you, that had already been streamlined even before I came on board. And like I said to you, I believe in continuation, right? A lot of the agencies have their unique roles. And Nigeria, also for us to be able to meet international best practices, these agencies exist for a reason, right? I don't have a problem with them, carrying out their own mandates or functions or acts. It's the procedure, the way they do it that is the problem. If they do it seamlessly, right? In fact, some of the things that will start to automatically reduce some of the issues around too many agencies, regulations, etc., is once we put into effect the idea of eliminating the 100% inspection. Once you put that in play, automatically this conversation around so many agencies will not really matter, because if a container is flagged, we want a thorough examination of that container.
Princess Zara, I agree with you, and your responses are apt.
I think we're on the same page. Me and Dr. Tokwe are one team.
We're all on the same page.
So
I agree with you. And Dr. Fashwa is heavy on data. And that is why at least the current data on our ease of doing business, I'm sure you're aware, we're about 131. We're on 147. No?
No. So what you have to...
Hold on now. Please hold on.
But she probably can speak better to that, but I don't think they are nuanced enough. Because let me say this.
Just hold on.
We have this cognitive dissonance whereby we believe every bad news about this country.
No, it's not
and
bad
somehow
news.
we just see Nigeria being at the bottom of every
Dr. Fashwa, you don't know what I'm going to ask you.
It can't be true.
You don't know what I'm asking you. But this is the available data, and we are using data. 131 on the ease of doing business. They said we need to resolve our position on insolvency and then trading across barriers. And trading across barriers, for this to happen, for us to be able to align properly, both at aligning states and federal policies together, for that to happen, for dividends to trickle down to the people that the Vice President talked about, we need to look at so many dynamics, and that is what we are talking about. Right. Now, you've talked about having to push to get states, governments to comply, with value addition, right. And that is why I'm asking again: the states' governments are autonomous. Certain things that will add value to the lives of everyday Nigeria are on the exclusive list, right, of government. So how easy will it be to get, you're laughing, please answer. How easy will it be, to achieve this alignment, federal and states, when, we have a lot of things on the exclusive list, others on the conclusive list. The state executives will tell you, see, Abuja cannot tell us what to do. The tax reform, for instance. Some governors are, they'll
get there eventually.
Yes.
Well, that's just the joy of democracy and federalism, that people, in some levels of government are independent, so to speak, quote and unquote. Of course, let me all get into the story of how it came about. You think about what they call federating units, and the fact that we're not America. So in America, there were 13 territories that decided to come together. In Nigeria, it was the colonial people that came here and then, decided to start sharing Nigeria, north and south, north, east and west, all those kind of things, So I think we'll get there. It's just one of the things. So the tax reforms are so fundamental. In fact, the last thing that compared to that, the last reform was sometime in 1993. So since 1999, we have not had this kind of reform. We can't be living on old laws that don't even understand the meaning of digitization of the internet, the laws that came before the internet. So this was the first time that they'll have a comprehensive. Eventually, the governors, most of them are seeing that they are going to benefit net at the end of the day. About 12 of them have signed up fully. Another, about 13 of them have the laws in their state assembly. About 11 of them are yet to actually move quickly. But that was also part of the challenge that was given to them yesterday. So, you know what, guys, you have to do this quickly.
And the local government autonomy as well, because that's very critical. No,
local government autonomy is in the realm of politics, right? Because, the argument that some governors say is that, you know what, there can only be 2 federating units. Yeah. Who said there can be? No, not necessarily, because you are going back to the American system where there were those places that now later became states, Virginia, Philadelphia, Maine, New York, and co. You see that the large population of the U.S. is in the East Coast. That was where the first people who came and settled in before they started going west. Going west was tough for the Americans. Conquering the Indians to go west and buying Louisiana and all those other places. So those who have read American history, but we are not America. So in Nigeria, again, I said the white man came. So Nigeria and India seem it's almost similar, because in India, the local governments are also recognized as federating units, because the same British colonized us and gave us the structure.
So we have our own peculiarity.
We have our own peculiarity, and we must live within our own peculiarity. But I wanted to make a comment, which maybe Princess will not like, but it's what it is. I like a good intellectual argument. It's around the 10 measurements of the World Bank ease of doing business. And you mentioned one of them just now. You mentioned insolvency. Are you kidding me? The average Nigerian starting a business, the average, the people from the South is the Igbo people who do a lot of business. He's not thinking about insolvency. He's thinking about doing business. So, when you talk about insolvency being a measurement, that's why you would see Nigeria on number 131. I'm telling you that the best place for a Nigerian to do business is in Nigeria. You can make $1 billion overnight in this country doing business, doing the right thing. And there's when you start, people will start a business today without even registering the company. This later they'll say, hey, should I register a trading name or a limited liability?
And
I did business in the US, in the UK. The kind of regulation every sector comes under is unbelievable. For a small company, first of all, they told us you can't even buy your equipment in cash. You have to buy on lease. Therefore, you find yourself buying equipment on lease and paying over 5 years. And then the inspectors will come twice a year. You have to pay for them to come and inspect you, even in a small company. You know what I'm saying? Apart from paying your taxes, once you register at the company house in the UK, the first letter you get will be from His Majesty Revenue and Custom, warning you of jail time in case you don't pay your payee, you don't pay your payee and NI, or you don't pay your income taxes. Here, companies collect payee from people and just pocket it, which is part of what the new tax reform is trying to counter. To say you can't deduct payee from your staff, and then the CEO comes and chops the money as if it's some slush fund. It belongs to the government. So some of those things I have written in the past, reviewing those 10 items and looking at some of them and saying, are you sure exactly this will measure the right thing for us? For example, the one you mentioned, the one on insolvency, I found it very hilarious. Or even there's another one that measures ease of paying taxes. Whereas we want taxes, but would you measure, the success of a company by the ease of paying taxes? But that's in the realm of Zara to President Zara.
All right.
Let's keep.
No, just hold on.
We need to go for a break now.
Just hold on.
We need to go for a break now. When we return, the conversation will continue. So stay with us. We'll take a break now. Well, thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And our discussion is still on the National Economic Council Summit. And our guests are still here. And we have got some comments and questions from some of our viewers, which we'd like to read out now so that our guests can respond to them. This one is from Ahmed Baba Dikwa from Maiduguri. It says, inclusive growth and sustainable development are not quick races, but shared journeys. They require building foundations that lift everyone and protect our future. Progress is fragile, and impatience, turning to turning on each other or chasing shortcuts can derail it. We must apply patience and unity for lasting benefit. Is built step by step together. All right, so that's a comment. Now, this is from Reverend John Tomman from Plateau State. He said, how does this concept align with Nigeria's renewed Hope National Development Plan or the SDGs specifically? Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, well, yeah, we can. I can give that a good shot. You know, of course, there's the Renewed Hope agenda. There's the National Development Plan. There's Mr. President's 8-point agenda, all of which have nexus between all of them. The National Development Plan is being finalized by the Ministry of Budget and Planning, which basically is going to come up with another, reset vision for the country and our aspirations. But even on a daily basis and even at the state level, the whole idea behind this conference is to challenge everybody to think bigger and to think inclusively for everybody in this country. So that's the way I look at it. In terms of the SDGs are 17 SDGs. I think the first one is about food poverty. It talks about food poverty, about poverty, then talks about other things like water, nutrition, like the environment, and so on. A government can actually take the SDGs and say, you know what, I just want to focus on attaining these SDGs, and it will kind of lead to the success, to the inclusion that we're talking about, including, it will even give you the impetus for economic growth. So all of these things align, all the ideas in the space align, and it's the kind of intellectual discussion we like to have, and that was had between the governors in the last 2 days, to be able to get to that point. There's a whole department that's thinking in terms of the SDGs at the national level. There's funding for SDGs that come from United Nations and elsewhere to encouragement for SDG. Remember, SDG is an improvement over the MDGs which ended a few years ago. The MDGs were not met. There's a fear that by 2030, the SDGs may not be met by many African countries. The run rate is slow, but it's not over till it's over. It's not over till it's over. For example, poverty levels. Of course, I always will question different kind of measurements that are used on some of these indices because you don't want to be beaten down. If someone comes and says, for example, the largest number of poor people are from Nigeria, but all of a sudden we saw that it used to be India. By some magic, one day the Indians actually emerged. It's not only because of policy, it's also because of some politics around those numbers that they churn out and so on. But again, rather than take it and say, look, as if a fait accompli, Nigeria is the poorest country in the world, we also are challenged to say, you know what, let's put out our own data and our own understanding of our society. Is Nigeria really the poorest country in the world? While we're working on reducing the poverty in the indices. And part of it is some of these reforms we are seeing. So these reforms around, wasting so much money on fuel subsidy, the $10 billion every year. Ensuring the money is now retained in the country. That's the money you see in the states. Some of the states are getting ×3 the allocations they used to get. Many of our states have a lot of latitude now to invest in infrastructure. Governor Dapo Abiodun made a statement yesterday and said, you know what, because he represented Governor Abdurrahman, who was unavoidably absent. He said, if you go to all the states, you will see the impact on infrastructure of these monies, these new monies they are getting. And I say, I challenge myself, I will go to all the states and I will take pictures of it because I like to do that kind of picturesque, kind of evidence-based reportage.
Ensure that you go with NTA crew. Ensure that you go with NTA crew.
Right.
Yes.
Again, NTA crew themselves can also go before I go because
no.
You people are everywhere. In fact,
we're everywhere. Actually.
Yeah, everywhere.
We're everywhere.
So
every
maybe
local
what we
government,
can do,
most of the local governments,
we can work together.
Yes,
what
why
we can
not?
do is that your people on ground.
Yes.
Look, let's take bias out of our mind. If a governor is building a bridge, picture the bridge.
And show you.
What else can a governor do? Part of my challenge to some of the governors, what else can you do that will actually reset a state? For example, make your state the El Dorado where everybody wants to go. For example, Akwa Ibom was able to achieve that a few years ago. The only stadium, FIFA-approved stadium in Nigeria now is the one that Godzilla Akpabio built in Uyo.
Okay,
You understand what I'm saying? And everybody wants to go to Uyo to see, hey, what's going on in Uyo? Maybe Enugu is onto something as well. Then we challenge all the states. And I think that way we'll meet some of the SDGs
Let's quickly begin to look at what can be done to achieve this sustainable. No, yes, I have just one. Okay. You know, I'll take it after this question. Because you talked about the MDGs. Yes, the MDGs made, because I covered MDGs, the MDGs made very substantial progress with some of the goals, especially the goals that dealt with maternal and child health. We made quite a lot of progress there. The one on gender, you know, equality, we made a lot of progress there. The SDGs now, which is, you know, a successor to the MDGs, has 17 goals. Now, the goals are somehow aligned with the 8-point agenda of Mr. President. If you look at the agenda, they are included in those. And now, in terms of implementation of the SDGs, it is not implemented as the MDGs. You understand? Under the office of OSAP, that's the office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President. Yes, it is not. Right now, implementation is layered. It's is decentralized. And that is why this alignment is very critical. Federal and state governments coming together to ensure not just that we achieve the Renewed Hope Agenda Development Plan, but also the SDGs and other wider development initiatives. Now, there are efforts. We've talked about efforts that at the federal level to ensure that dividends of democracy trickle down to the poorest of the poor, to the poorest household, so that they feel the impact of government. I know the government took the initiative to ensure that local government system is empowered by enabling the financial autonomy. We need to get that working. The federal government also ensured that multiple taxation, businesses, small businesses, don't suffer from that by bringing out this tax reform. We need to, dot the gray areas and ensure that it works. And there are other initiatives. Again, the fuel subsidy removal, we've not talked about it. Governors are saving huge amount of money from the fuel subsidy removal. They need to, align these savings and inject back into the system. So that's why I'm asking, is this just talk? This NEC meeting, is this just a gathering of intellectuals like my sister here, like you? What is the implementing framework? How do we intend to get this alignment work at all levels?
There was a communique issued at the end of that meeting yesterday, immediately, right after, which was read by the permanent secretary. And the agreements of what to take forward were put there. The strategy will be a communication from the office of the vice president as the chairman of NEC back to the states, reminding them. And of course, the NEC meetings happen every month. Mind you, this one was a retreat conference, which was very deep and intellectual. At the meetings is where the matters arising get discussed. These agreements and communique is part of the matters arising. How have we gone on this? There are subcommittees on different things under the NEC, under the National Economic Council, that are made to deal with different issues. And so this is where we take it forward. I think the critical thing about the meeting of the last 2 days is to open everybody's mind to the possibilities. You spoke about government, state government, and I also said here that the state government said yesterday, come to our states and you will see what we are doing with the money that we are making. Because, of course, the money will not just be sitting down. Of course, some states are doing better than others. But they have also thrown a challenge. And I said, okay, even I will go to those states. And, of course, we say NTA, too, will cover some of those. For example, if NTA had a program to say, okay, focus on new infrastructure in every state.
You can sponsor
including,
that.
Well, I don't know. My office doesn't have a budget. So you can talk to
actually, we have a lot of,
but the truth is that,
on NTA,
so you can actually do that. No, the states themselves can sponsor. The states can sponsor. If your reporter have to go to different places, okay, you say you have built this water project. Okay, where's the water project? Can you take pictures and show the people? No, because, again, let me tell you what I've noticed. My background was in banking, and after banking, I went into consulting. I'm a natural marketer. You know, I know that if you don't push your product, nobody will buy it. You know, and so, but I've seen instances, even in the federal government, where great things get done.
A good product sells its time.
Well, no, you can't wait for it. You know why? You know why that won't work anymore? Because we now live in an age where there's so much information overload by everybody. So many things get beamed. We grew up in a time when there was only NTA. And at 4 o'clock, NTA will start.
And radio
on TV, NTA will start, and they will play the national anthem first.
Yes.
So if you're a good child, you have to stand up when NTA is playing the national anthem at 4 o'clock before they will read the news and then do the children program at 5 o'clock.
Yes.
And by 11 o'clock, they are closing. Today, the average child has access to 300 channels on DSTV. He has his Instagram. He has his smartphone. He has his YouTube. So you cannot say programs. A good project will no longer sell itself.
Yeah.
You must gain that mind share. And I see instances where even if at the federal government we undersell many times. I'm doing a compendium of the third anniversary. I did the second one. I'm doing a compendium. If my research team, if you see what they've come up with already, it's incredible, but if you don't push it, nobody will sing your own praises for you except to sing it yourself.
You talked about budgeting. You talked about budgeting, and that reminded me of our budgeting system, where governments present the budgets. At the end of the day, releases fall short,
right.
and then you discover that the state governments cannot even execute some of the projects they intend to. So how do we also look at...
States, you don't joke with the releases for states. Let me allow...
Yes, states and ministries.
Yes.
States, maybe...
Yes, maybe administration.
But to be honest with you, during these administrations, the state governors themselves have attested that they have received so much more than
maybe not states.
Maybe
not states. Because this, sorry, Princess, because this alignment is not just about state. It's about all...
Maybe MDA.
Yes,
yes.
The MDAs now, how do they come in? How do they overcome this issue of, poor releases of funds?
Again, I think that like Mr. President rightfully said in his speech, we do have a liquidity problem in the country, right? So even for MDAs, it's about prioritizing and deciding what projects to focus on. You know, I mean, we don't have the liberty of. I think the last administration had a lot more liquidity, and as such, they could splurge a lot more on many things. That were not necessarily or should not have necessarily been their main focus. With this administration, it takes for the heads, whether it's a minister, if it's a head of a parastatal or a department, to be more intentional about its focus. Also, there are international partners that you can work with and leverage on for ideas. For me, I think a close integration between the federal and the subnational is needed. With us at PEBEC, some of the practical things that we're doing, you said, is NEC just going to be a conversation and then we leave? For me, it was an avenue to amplify the conversation and bring to the forefront the fact that for us to be able to achieve some of our very ambitious goals, even without spending money, setting the right policy and creating the right business environment is the way forward. Businesses or economies are not built on government intervention. For as long as we like, we can keep saying, oh, we're giving monies to the poor. In fact, I did a whole, I'm way junior to doctor here. I'm still on my way to that title, but I'm also doing some of my own research around poverty, global poverty, and how to eradicate that. And the reality of it is giving stipends to people who do not have money, I don't want to call them poor, does not necessarily shift the needle or create wealth. All it simply does, in most cases, is it keeps them within that same environment of being poor, with just, maybe being able to settle some of their basic needs. And when the Vice President spoke about inclusivity in his speech, he mentioned specifically providing opportunities for a child born in Lagos versus a child born in Lafayette. That was very strong. That touched home strong for me because originally I'm from Lafayette. And then I picture the two. I lived in Lagos as a child, and I'm from Lafayette, and I'm wondering if I would have had equal opportunity if I had grown up in my hometown of Lafayette. And
the minister, the Minister of State for Education grew up, I think she said somewhere in Borno or so. She told us here how she went to school in Borno, and she's one outstanding lady I've ever met.
In terms of the inclusivity that he's talking about today, he's not saying that, say for instance, if you grow up in, so when you talk about inclusivity, you're not talking about the middle class or the elite class. You're talking about the poorest of the poorest, right? Having equal access. Yes, equal access, right? So if you grew up in Maiduguri and you're a middle income home or an elite family, of course you will have access to
that. Is having equal access, just like you have in other climes.
Exactly. So that's what
but there's something that you talked about the other time, and that is this issue of bureaucratic bottlenecks.
Right.
How do you address that? How are you addressing that?
In 60 seconds, we have just less than 2 minutes to go.
Because it's important.
So one of the things we're looking at is the relevance of some of the regulations that exist today, right? We can't shy away from the fact that there's so much duplicacy in terms of our roles, between MDAs. There's so many overlapping mandates, so we've tried to streamline. And how have we tried to streamline? By creating these clusters. Within these clusters, MDAs are now being forced to rely on each other. We have situations where, of course, nobody wants to shed any of their responsibilities, because especially the ones that sort of translate into income generating, right? But we must embrace the one government mantra, which Mr. President is pushing.
Thank you. Let me quickly take a few messages before we round up. This one is, he says, the only way to bridge gap between federal and state is to reduce the number of political parties. Nigeria needs to learn from China and not from Europeans, as they are profit-based, not. This is from Omololu BA. To buttress Dr. Fasho's point, economic policies of the present administration is great, especially targeting at eliminating the sufferings of a common man. The people angry at the new tax laws are either those that do not understand it or those who are extremely wealthy and do not want to pay taxes that correspond to their. This one is Studio Bera. He says, I'm enjoying the program. The male guest is on point. The best place to do business is one's own country. But this one says, Ade from Oyo. This is what you want to hear. I received my salary, and the tax reform doesn't seem to have reduced my tax payments for January 2026.
No, there's a seminar going on now.
It also hasn't impacted my net pay. So does this mean federal civil servants or MDAs are excluded from the tax reform?
Good question. But again, like I said, there's a seminar going on now from the PFPTR, the presidential retraining people who are managing payroll. It's very important. Otherwise, your payroll manager may be cheating you, resulting in paying more to government rather than reduce. Anybody earning 25 million and below should get some credit back.
Thank you.
And that's it. And you see, I quoted 6 newspapers who have reported that.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Fashua.
So that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Fashua. Dr. Tope Fashua, of course. Go ahead. You have the
Dr. Fashua is the special advisor to the President on Economic Matters, Office of the Vice President. If we give you the room, you can speak for 10 hours. Thank you so much for your contribution. We'll still have you, come back to talk more on this issue. Also, we want to thank Princess Zara Mustafa Audu, Director General, Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PBEC. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning.